America has just been blasted by an unexpected shockwave. Coca-Cola, the world's most recognizable drink, has announced the closure of its U.S. production lines. Yes, you heard that correctly. The factories, which have been in operation for decades, if not generations, are closing. Conveyor belts have halted. Bottling machines are hushed. Thousands of American workers were sent home with nothing but a pink slip in the question, what now? And the reason? President Trump's fresh wave of punitive tariffs is intended to protect American industry. Instead, they've transformed the world's most American brand into the latest casualty in an out-of-control trade war. How did Trump react? It's just what you'd expect. Angry tweets, finger-pointing, and labeling Coca-Cola's choice unpatriotic, while discreetly attempting to limit the economic catastrophe. But the harm is done. Small villages that relied on Coca-Cola for jobs are on the verge of collapse. Prices for your favorite beverages are set to rise. And if you believe this is only about soda, think again. This is about what happens when American businesses can no longer afford to stay in America. Smash that like button, subscribe, and let's get into why Coca-Cola's closure is a wake-up call that America cannot ignore. It occurred on a Tuesday morning. Coca-Cola factories in Georgia, Ohio, and Texas became silent after decades of operation. Truck drivers who queued up every morning for pickups discovered vacant loading docks. Workers in red uniforms waited outside chain-link gates, carrying cardboard boxes containing their things and looking at the factory that had just closed its doors forever. Inside, the machinery that filled hundreds of bottles every hour remained still. Conveyor belts that had previously rattled with the promise of employment were now still. The fragrance of syrup in the air, once a reassuring reminder of a hard day's work, has vanished, all because Coca-Cola made the decision we can't afford to keep producing here anymore. Why? President Trump's strong tariffs target everything Coca-Cola relies on, including metal for cans, foreign sugar, and industrial parts. Operating costs increased overnight. What was once manageable became untenable, and sustaining manufacturing domestically required Coca-Cola to raise costs so high that it lost customers to cheaper competitors. So Coca-Cola chose to survive. The corporation claimed that it will relocate production to Mexico, Brazil, and Southeast Asia in order to maintain prices down and remain competitive on a worldwide scale. What's the impact? Thousands of American jobs have been lost, and little villages established around Coca-Cola are now facing economic collapse. This was not simply a commercial choice. It was the day America's favorite brand switched out the lights, bringing stillness where there had once been optimism. Within days following Coca-Cola's revelation, the repercussions were tough to dismiss. Supermarkets in small villages and major cities alike began to notice an unnerving trend. Shelves that were previously brimming with Coca-Cola were running bare. Vending machines stood vacant at schools, companies, and petrol stations, their bright red logos serving as reminders of what was missing. What's the reason? Coca-Cola's transfer overseas meant that your favorite drink had to travel thousands of miles back to the United States, incurring taxes, shipping charges, and border delays along the way. Each can and bottle suddenly had a price tag that no one had expected. Distributors rushed to complete orders, but the numbers did not match up. Some businesses managed to supply Coca-Cola, although the prices were greater than ever before. A 12-pack that used to cost $6 was now about $9 or $10, forcing consumers to make difficult decisions, pay more, or switch to cheaper alternatives. Restaurants felt the hardship as well. Diners and small cafes that proudly served Coca-Cola were now faced with unmanageable invoices, leading many to discontinue the brand entirely. Some firms attempted to absorb the expense to retain loyal consumers, but it was a losing struggle. Coca-Cola's worldwide approach may have saved the company money, but it had a different impact on American customers. What was once a common purchase was now considered a luxury by many, and the bare shelves served as a reminder that when production departs the country, the people bear the consequences. President Trump wasted little time in expressing his outrage. Within hours after Coca-Cola's announcement, Trump moved to social media, calling the decision an unpatriotic betrayal of American workers and accused the company of caving to globalist pressures. In heated tweets, he pledged to hold Coca-Cola accountable and even threatened to impose extra taxes on imported Coca-Cola goods if the firm continued to sell in the United States after closing its operations. However, beneath the bravado was terror. Trump's tariffs were intended to safeguard American employment while forcing businesses to remain home. Instead, the reverse was occurring. First Ford, then Coca-Cola, two American giants departing because the cost of doing business in America had grown too expensive under his policies. Behind closed doors, experts sought to control the repercussions, fearing a domino effect that might force other large firms to follow Coca-Cola's lead. Meanwhile, Trump's political opponents pounced, accusing him of driving businesses out while pretending to be their champion. In the heartland, where Coca-Cola manufacturing had once been the lifeblood of communities, Trump voters were conflicted. Many people had trusted him to secure their jobs, but now they fear unemployment, while costs for simple products like soda increase. Trump's furious response generated headlines, but it couldn't save Coca-Cola. The shutdown showed a hard truth. America's economic plans were at odds with the realities of global commerce, and even the president's rage was insufficient to prevent an American symbol from fleeing its home nation to survive. Coca-Cola was more than a brand in places like Columbus, Georgia, and rural Ohio. Generations of families labored on the manufacturing lines, loading trucks and servicing the equipment that kept the effervescent emblem of America flowing throughout the country. Now, the towns are silent. Workers gather outside shuttered factories, arms folded, as security locks the gates for the final time. Local restaurants that used to be packed with Coca-Cola employees around lunchtime now sit half empty, with owners nervously wiping off tables and wondering when they'll be forced to close. Small suppliers who relied on Coca-Cola contracts, such as local transportation firms, bottle cap manufacturers, and maintenance workers, are facing insolvency. Schools that rely on Coca-Cola donations for sports programs and community activities are already experiencing cash shortages. Even local nonprofits are feeling the impact as Coca-Cola's community involvement disappears overnight. Many people have suffered personal losses. Parents who raised their children on Coca-Cola payments are now faced with the heartbreaking option to leave their hometowns in search of jobs, ripping apart families and connections built over decades of shared community. Labor unions, who were formerly confident in Coca-Cola's commitment to American workers, are in crisis. Leaders who campaigned for fair salaries and safe working conditions are now facing the hard truth that global economics trumps pledges made on factory floors. Coca-Cola's closure was more than simply a business decision for these communities. It was a watershed moment, leaving behind broken aspirations, vacant houses, and a haunting question: who will come next? Coca-Cola's leaving did more than merely quiet bottling facilities. It sent shockwaves across America's entire industrial infrastructure. CEOs in Atlanta, Detroit, and Chicago are discreetly asking themselves, if Coca-Cola cannot withstand these tariffs, can we? Snack industries reliant on aluminum packaging, beverage brands utilizing foreign sugar, and even household products makers are reconsidering their future in America. Because the reality is that Coca-Cola's decision created a hazardous precedent. It demonstrated that even the most American of enterprises might be compelled to go abroad if operational expenses rise due to protectionist legislation. If Coca-Cola can't make it work, what hope does a tiny producer have? Suppliers are terrified. Orders for Coca-Cola caps, labels, and cans are drying up at factories, triggering layoffs and closures that reverberate throughout cities that have already suffered greatly. Technical schools and community colleges that collaborated with Coca-Cola on training programs are facing financial cuts, limiting chances for young people seeking secure jobs in their hometowns. Meanwhile, foreign markets are profiting from America's fissures. Countries such as Mexico and Brazil are giving Coca-Cola tax benefits, lower labor costs, and stable trade frameworks. Coca-Cola is accepting those bargains because it is necessary for survival. This is not only about Coca-Cola, it is about the gradual hollowing out of American industry as a result of policies that do not accord with global reality. As additional firms consider leaving, Coca-Cola's exit may be regarded not only as an economic choice, but also as the moment when America's industrial strength began to deteriorate permanently. So here we are. Coca-Cola, the brand that defined American life for more than a century, has shut down its U.S. manufacturing lines, leaving abandoned factories, unemployed people, and suffering cities in its wake. All the while, President Trump's tariffs, intended to preserve American workers, sent those jobs offshore. Prices are increasing, neighborhoods are collapsing, and America's promise of opportunity is crumbling beneath the weight of economic realities that cannot be ignored. And for what? Was it worthwhile? Was the promise of defending an American business worth the expense of transporting an American symbol to Mexico and Brazil? Is it worth abandoning families with only memories of a career they assumed would last forever? Because Coca-Cola's shutdown is more than just a financial decision. It's a warning. If the cost of being American is too high for Coca-Cola, it may soon become too expensive for others. Share your opinions below. Like and subscribe for real-time updates on America's economic crossroads. Because when Coca-Cola departs, we must all ask ourselves, who will come after them and what will remain?